Hi, and welcome to Sparkle Art.
Hello gorgeous people! Today I have a beautiful and fairly simple travel journal cover. You could do this as an art journal page or a card, anything you like really. The techniques translate really well, and I'm of course using some beautiful art supplies from Lulu Art, including some Finnabar Art Alchemy paints, some Prima vintage pastel watercolors. Yes, this is the new palette, it's so pretty. Some old papers and some really gorgeous stencils. So join me for a step-by-step process video on how to create this beautiful journal cover. Come on, let's get started. I'm going to decorate the cover of my traveler's notebook. And I have this neat little traveler's notebook, and this one's got pre-printed pages, which is great because it makes it nice and quick, but it kind of locks you into exactly what's on this page. So you might prefer to have one of the plain traveler's notebooks from Prima. So the first thing I have to do is use some matte medium and glue on some collage papers. Now I'm going to use things that I've got from Lulu Art and stuff that I've collected, but the other thing I'm going to do is add some bookbinding tape, because I've noticed that the spine is already getting a little bit frayed. You can see the pages coming out here. Alright, so I have a little piece of adhesive bookbinding tape here, and I've cut it ever so slightly shorter than the actual traveler's notebook. I'm just going to peel off the backing and stick this down. Just make sure to smooth it down with your fingers. And there you go. So that will just help strengthen the spine. So I have a bunch of these awesome vintage pages from the Lulu Art store, and these just come in packs of random stuff, and I had to have a huge laugh because one of them was the history of Canada, which happens to be where I'm going, so that totally needs to be on the page somewhere so that you can see it too. So I'm just going to tear these into pieces because I don't want to see any particular full page. Alright, so I think that has a nice variety of tones, a nice sort of section down the middle. Now this old paper is fragile, so it's really important to be careful. You won't have a lot of time to move it and get it into position. So what I'm going to do is use the matte medium as a glue and glue it down, and then once it's down I'm also going to put it over the top to act as a protectant. Just continue to add the other layers on top until it is finished. Now what I'm really liking, and it was a little unexpected, is that some of these layers have gone transparent, and that is just so cool. Now I don't know if it's going to stay like that when it dries, it may not, but even if it's just for the moment, I'm liking it. Now make sure you give the entire surface a really good coat. Be heavy-handed with the matte medium, because the more you have strengthened this front, the better it's going to look over time. Now any of those scruffy edges we will trim off once it's completely dry. Now be careful with your fingers as you're holding this down, because it will tear some of the paper away, which is kind of a cool technique you can use if you wanted to just remove bits of the text. Now once the paper gets saturated, it can become quite easy to damage, so once it's fully covered, leave it to dry. Now I'm going to add some colour with some Archival ink. I'm going to use some stamps and a couple of different colours. I've got pale ochre and tree branch. And I'm going to start with those, and we'll see how that goes. So I've got a gorgeous stencil from Tim Holtz, and it's got lots of travel words on here, and I've got the wonderful little applicator. I'm just going to apply a few words down the spine. I just have to quickly see what might fit. Now I'm using Archival ink because that way if I add anything wet over the top it won't run. And that just gives a really nice simple spine down here with some appropriate words. So now I'm going to add a little of the pale ochre, and I'm just going to use Captured Adventure stamps from 49 and Market. And these won't show up very well on the back with what I'm about to do. Now I'm also going to use some of these same stamps on some of the pages inside, so it will kind of tie together. So as you can see, it's very, very faint. It's only adding a little bit of visual interest. So the ochre was a little too pale, so I'm going to go back to the tree branch, but I'll just have to be really careful that it doesn't overwhelm everything. Alright, so I feel that's put a really nice amount of visual texture on the background there and dirtied it up slightly, just so it doesn't look quite so, you know, brand new, stuck on old page kind of thing. And now I'm going to add some colour with the new set from Prima, and this one is Vintage Pastels, which of course you can grab in the Lulu art store. So this will be the first time I've used these. So it's Vintage Pastels. Haven't even done the colour swatch yet. I suppose I should do that now. That golden glow is interesting because it's almost the same colour as my backgrounds. The terracotta is also really pretty. But the sage, the periwinkle, the lilac and the breezy are what's really speaking to me at the moment. So I think I might start with those. No, I don't want it to take over, so I'm going to use quite a bit of water with this water brush and spread it out quite a lot. And of course the nice thing is, because you've got the matte medium there, if you put it anywhere you don't like, you can always just wipe that right off. And then a little of the sage to finish. I don't want to add a lot of colour here. I'm looking to enhance that background tone rather than take it over. Anywhere you'd like to cover something, use a little of that golden glow and just add it on quite thickly. So if you'd like to just sort of disguise any of that text a little, and that golden glow is practically perfect on old book paper. And I'm using it just to help knock that back a bit so you can still see the writing underneath. It's just not quite as prominent. Or if you've got any slightly newer book paper, pop this over the top and help those two blend a little better. And then leave it to dry. Got this little voyage piece of text that I want to keep, and now that the gorgeous watercolours have dried, it's just add a bit of colour to my background without taking over. Now for the focal point for my gorgeous journal cover. I've got a variety of brushes here and some of the Art Alchemy paints from Finnabar. So I've got Aqua Rose in the Opal Magic, Pink Blush, Wild Fuchsia, Rich Turquoise, Crocus Fields, Blackberry. I also have Frozen Berries and Light Patina. I may or may not use all of those colours, but I have them here in case I need them. I also have a gorgeous stencil, and this one is from Stamperia, and I'm just going to flip it over so that it fits sort of around my page here. And the colours I'm using sort of echo the colours of these watercolour paints. Now I want to make sure that this word voyage is not impacted, not sort of covered up, and have the feather, which is what this stencil is, wrapping around here, and then some of the birds coming off the edge. So I'm just going to twist the stencil until it's sort of to my liking. And I think this will do it for me. Now it is super thin, this stencil, so I'm going to have to tape it down. And I'm just going to use some washi tape to do that. So I'm going to start with the Blackberry, which is my darkest colour. And I'm going to add it to the top and the bottom. And I'm just going to be using a dry brush technique for this. So I don't want too much colour on my brush. Now, so that I've got some similarities top and bottom, I'm also going to make some of these little birds the same colour. Now I'm going to cover quite a few of these little birds with this nice dark, and then I will go over later and add another layer of a different colour. Now I'm going to work backwards and add the next darkest colour, which is the metallic Crocus Fields. And normally what I would do is add use this with a clean brush, but I don't want to because I kind of want the colours to blend. So while it's still got some of the blackberry colour on it, I'm just going to mix this on my little palette here and then add some of that beautiful purple, and then I will start adding it a bit more cleanly. Now I might have to do more than one coat because I'd like to cover what's underneath. Now you'll want to vary it, so in a few places, instead of stippling, just add some very soft brush strokes to help blend those two colours together. Now, as with the other colour, I'm now going to add a layer of the rich turquoise, blending off to the side here. And as I said before about blending, just give a few little swipes of the brush, just where those colours meet, to get that softer blend from one colour to the next. Now, if you like, you can also add a bit of this blue up where the birds are, just so that they're not all the one colour. Add as much or as little as you like. Almost down to the end of the colours here. This is the fuchsia. Now I'm just going to wipe my brush off in a piece of paper towel at the moment. I can't use water because the minute I add water to this, I'm going to get a different sort of quality to the paint. And I'd like to keep it a bit more consistent than that the whole way down. Alright, so I don't want to redo everything. I just want to get a bit of extra colour down where it's required. And that's basically just sort of this area through here. So I'm going to start with the Crocus Fields and go and add another layer of that over the top. I've swapped to my little Jane Davenport travel brush because I've had to wash the other one. And again, I'm just using that same dry brush technique. Now I'm going to need to wait for that first layer to dry, then I can come in with my second coat to make it a bit brighter and bolder. I think I might just add a bit of this pink blush. Alright, so I'm going to add in a little bit of Payne's Grey and Carbon Black, and I just have colours from Golden here. So I'm just going to go with the Payne's Grey first. This is a beautiful, really sort of dark navy blue grey kind of a colour. I'm going to start with the edges, but then darken up some of this colour here. Now again, I'm still using the same dry brushing technique. This time I'm creating an edge, and then once I've got enough paint off my brush, I'm just sort of tapping, scraping, dry brushing the ink over the background. So it does two things. It highlights a little bit of the texture, and it not just covers, because you can still see the colour underneath, but it sort of darkens what's back there. You just have to be quite careful and slow while you're doing it. So just go really slow and keep building it up layer by layer. So the aim of what you're doing now is to be able to still see the colours in the background, but make everything a little bit darker. Okay, so after seeing how pretty this darker area looks, add a bit more at the top here. As you can actually still see the Prima colours poking through underneath. And then back to the dry brushing carefully. Oh yeah, that's pretty. Okay. Now for a little bit of splattery goodness. And I'm just going to use my Sharpie for that. So just depress until it is quite inky. And the closer you hold it, the smaller the splatters will be. And the further away, and the more recently you've inked the tip, the bigger the splatters will be. So you need a good amount of splattering on the background. If you can, also try and get some splatters on those birds. That's not quite as easy because they're so small, and you can't really direct where those splatters will go, so it's kind of difficult. Alright, moment of truth. Removing the stencil very carefully. And that looks kind of cool. So now I've got my fine line applicator, and in here is some golden paint. The colour is gold. And I've mixed it with a little bit of airbrush medium. If you don't have that, a fluid medium, anything to make the paint a little bit less sticky, so just so it flows a bit better, would be fine. Now I'm going to use this to outline the feather. Now just go very carefully, because the surface is so textured from all of that mixed media paper and all of those layers of collage. you could very easily catch this fine little nib and end up with splatters. Now usually I love splatters, but not when I'm outlining. Now at this point you can add a few flourishes and little flares and make it your own. I kind of like doing a few of my own little bits and pieces on things. So I'm just changing the shape of those little feathery bits ever so slightly, making it a bit more unique. Oh gosh, that's pretty. Look at that. So nice. Now just hold it up and make sure that you haven't got any sort of weird little bubbles or any bits that you've missed. Sometimes you can get some bubbles. Just flatten them out. Now just to finish it off, I'm going to colour this black sticker with the same coloured Art Alchemy paints and probably add some of the Payne's Grey over the top so it blends in beautifully. Alright, so I'm just going to hold that up and make sure that there's enough colour on here. I've got nice dark colour on the bottom. If you feel that you've sort of gone over and taken out too much of the metallic on the top at all, just wipe the brush off and add a little bit more and then tone it back again with the Payne's Grey. Sometimes this layering can take a couple of tries to get it right, so don't worry if it's not perfect on the first go. That's the really cool thing with mixed media, is that you just keep playing with it until you like it. And sometimes on the first round I really don't. And it isn't until I build up some of those layers that I really start to like something and feel happy with it. Now this is going to have that beautiful dark bottom, and I'm just adding just a hint more of this beautiful metallic Art Alchemy paint from Finnabar. I love the way that you can just sort of build it up until you get what you want. And for me, just this touch of additional metallic in the top there is sort of really helping the way I feel about this. It's sort of, I don't know, I like it. And now I'm just going to add a bit more of that Payne's Grey to knock a tiny bit of that back because I don't want it taking over. I do want this nice and dark, but I just want hints of that metallic poking through. And that's what I've got right now. So I'm going to stop fiddling with it. See that? I've got this beautiful metallic purple shimmer just sort of sneaking through the darker paint. So I'm going to let that dry and then add it to my journal cover. And that's it. Done. Finished. Take the photo. So I hope you have enjoyed this travel journal cover made for Lulu Art with some of the most gorgeous products, really. And don't forget, subscribe to the Lulu Art channel if you would like to see more gorgeous stuff that you can buy from Kylie at Lulu Art. And pop on over and subscribe to my channel, Sparkle Tart, if you would like to see more from me. And of course you can see much more of my travel journal and my travels coming up on my Instagram feed. So pop over and give me a follow, and all of the information is in the details and the description section underneath this video. So I hope you've enjoyed this project. I can't wait to get stuck into my next journal cover. Bye!